Hi everybody, let's talk about comparative advantage. So we defined earlier that comparative advantage is when you have the lowest opportunity cost for producing something. So if you remember, we have our PPCs and we take our maximum numbers from each of these PPCs. So this chart shows that Guy Fieri can make 6 cakes or 24 cookies, and we added the or in here to remind you that when you see one of these charts, they're saying either 6 cakes and 0 cookies or either 24 cookies and 0 cakes. So if Rachel Ray makes 12 cakes, how many cookies can she make? If you answered 0, you're correct. But in that same amount of time, she could make 36 cookies. What we need to do now is to determine absolute comparative advantages. I always look at absolute advantage first because often you can solve the problem without doing any math. So absolute advantage, who's the best at making cakes? Rachel Ray. Who's the best at making cookies? Rachel Ray. This is a case where Rachel Ray has the absolute advantage in both products. But if you think about this as a bakery, anytime you've worked in a place, you found somebody who was not quite as good as everybody else, but they're getting paid the same hourly rate, maybe less, hopefully, than you, and they still need to do some work. So if Rachel's running this bakery, she's got to put Guy Fieri on something. So the question is, should she have him making cakes or making cookies? This is where we determine comparative advantage. So what we're going to do is simplify these things. So for Guy, we're going to divide through by 6 because he can make 6 cakes, and divide through by 6 here. So we'll simplify this by dividing both sides by 6, and we'll get 1 to 4. For Rachel, we'll start in the same box, but for her to get 1, we're going to divide through by 12. So we divide through by 12, we get 1 to 3. The division we did here was to say, what would it cost Guy Fieri to make 1 cake? What would it cost Rachel Ray to make 1 cake? And the answer is 4 cookies. So in the time it takes Guy Fieri to make 1 cake, he could have made 4 cookies, where Rachel Ray could only make 3 cookies. We give up the least if we put Guy working on cookies and we put Rachel working on cakes. So with comparative advantage, because we're comparing, we're going to put one person at one station and the other person at the other. So if we choose to put Guy at cookies, we will have to put Rachel at the other station, which is cakes. Why do we do this? Because it's the lowest opportunity cost. Once we've divided through, your choices for comparative advantage are based on your lower opportunity cost. You give up something either way, but which one gives up less? You're going to specialize in trade based on opportunity cost and comparative advantage. Here, which combo would you rather have? 4 cookies or 3 cookies? Well, I know I want 4 cookies. I am a cookie fiend. So we will put Guy on the cookies and Rachel on the cakes. Another important question is if there's a tie. In this case, when we talk about absolute advantage or comparative advantage, advantage means you're better at something. So no one has an advantage if your numbers are the same, whether they're the same in the chart or whether they're the same in your ratios. You would say there's no advantage. And I'll give you an example of that while we work one more comparative advantage problem. Okay, I've created a quick problem here that shows you a couple of things. So the first thing I do anytime I see one of these problems is I'm going to solve for absolute comparative advantage. So absolute advantage is going to be the person who's best at something. So if we're talking about producing songs, neither Jay-Z nor Luke Bryan have an absolute advantage. If we talk about writing songs, Luke Bryan has the absolute advantage because he can write more songs. Notice I did a little nod to the country rap mesh that is going on in the music industry right now. So Luke Bryan has the absolute advantage in writing songs, while no one has the absolute advantage in producing them. Now remember, comparative advantage is where you're going to specialize so that you can trade. So we're assuming that these two are looking so that they can trade skills. One of them will work on producing, one of them will work on writing. It's probably pretty obvious who should do what, but I want to show you how to do this in case it isn't obvious, but also so you can do it on a more complex problem. So the first thing we're going to do here is divide through by our first number. For Jay-Z, we're going to divide by 7, and that gives me 1. And then I'm going to divide by 7 again, and that gives me 2. Then down here for Luke Bryan, I'll do the same. I'm going to divide by 7, and that gives me 1. And I'm going to divide by 7, and that gives me 3. Now all I want to look at is this part of the chart. And what's happening here is this is the ratio of producing songs to writing songs. Luke Bryan can write 3 songs, while Jay-Z can only write 2 songs in the time it takes each of them to produce 1 song. So what we should do is put Luke Bryan where he has the larger number, the lowest opportunity cost. It cost him way too much to produce songs, so he should write them. Jay-Z, it doesn't cost him very much to produce songs. It only costs him 2 written songs, so we'll put him on production. So for comparative advantage, Luke will write, Jay-Z will produce. The absolute advantage, of course, none for produce, Luke for writing. Now, remember, we're doing this to see how we should specialize and who should do what. So the whole purpose of this is if you and I are going to work together in something, we're going to figure out where we're going to specialize. You've done this before, just not using math. Say you were working on a group project and someone said, oh, I have really neat handwriting. I'll write out the poster. I'm really good at drawing. I'll do the drawing. I'm good at the math. I'll type that out. You did this. You just did it more informally.